Hello everyone! Today we are going to talk about the national state. And first, let's start with a simple question. Have you ever noticed how, when we speak about countries, we often refer to them as if they were persons, living beings, or an entity? For example, when we say France abolished the death penalty in 1981, we are speaking as if France was alive with everything that comes with it. Does she have a body, a mind, and a will of her own? Yes and no. France is at some point an imaginary construct. In other words, we think about France as if she was alive because in some way our concept of this country resembles a living being. But this does not mean that she is truly alive, like animals, plants, and humans are. So why do we talk about France and other countries as if they were alive? Well, when we say that France abolished the death penalty in 1981, most of us understand that the French government, with the approval of the French people, decided to abolish the death penalty. And in that case, it really makes sense because, of course, the French people are living beings. The problem is that when we say France, we often refer to the French nation or to the French state. But these, the nation and the state, are not the same. And this is when we need some history to better understand the concept of the national states. The nation, in short, is a group of people that share strong cultural links, like language, traditions, and religion, within the same territory. Nationalities have ancient roots, and our understanding of this concept has not changed a lot since ancient times. The concept of state, on the other hand, is the system by which a group of people is governed. The people in the government, their institutions, their buildings that they use, the laws that they write, and everything that they utilize to keep functioning, like the streets, hospitals, schools, the armed forces, the police, and the fire department. But unlike our concept of the nation, what we consider the state today is very different from other historic periods. For example, in ancient Egypt, religion was involved in every aspect of Egyptian society. Their priests were members of the ruling class, the pharaoh was considered a semi-god, and we can say that religion was very much involved in the activities of the government. On the other side, today, most national states have a clear separation between the government and the religion. In the same way, today, most countries have forces like the army, police, and firefighters, and we consider them to be a part of the state. The logic behind it is that these forces are there to serve their country and the people living in it. The citizens pay taxes, and a portion of this money goes to the armed forces to keep the citizens safe. However, in Europe, during the 12th century, this was not the case. The armies were generally owned by the nobility, and they were forces paid by them to serve their interests, to serve their lords. So we can say today that the French armed forces are part of the state. But if we go back to the Middle Ages in France, we would find that the medieval knights and their armies wouldn't fit into the same category. They were not members of the state. They were there to serve the nobility, their lords. To understand how did we get to our concept of the national state, we have to point out the changes that came to be after the liberal revolutions between the 18th and the 19th centuries. The liberal revolutions were, in short terms, the process in which the monarchies that ruled Europe and the American continent lost their power and the new social class emerged to take the place, the bourgeoisie. The French Revolution is considered to be the most notable example of the liberal revolutions. These revolutions brought republican governments all over the world. The idea that the state should be run by the common citizens was very powerful, and these revolutionaries used this idea to win the popularity of the common people during the liberal revolutions. The concept of state that we have today comes from that process, and when we speak about a country as if it was alive, it is because the democratic states represent people, not just one single individual like the king or the nobility, but a various notable large group of citizens. So, when we are talking about elements that represent a country in our present days, how can we differentiate the nation from the state? Well, just remember, if it is something that represents the identity of the people towards a country, generally traditions, it is probably a national element. If it is something that is owned by the citizens of the country and works for or by the government, we are most likely talking about the state. For example, these are elements that can have a strong link to someone's national identity. Language, traditions, typical food, beliefs, culture, and shared spaces. On the other hand, here are some examples of the elements that constitute the state. Laws, like the Constitution, public spaces, like parks, streets, forests, beaches, schools, universities, hospitals, the territory, the public land, public buildings and institutions, and of course the armed forces. You might be able to tell that there are some points that could be both a product of national identity which is owned by the state, like a national park, a monument, or the flag of the country. But all the things that fit into one of those categories constitute what we can call the national state. I hope this video was helpful to all of you. Thanks for watching and see you next time.